September 2015. A family trip to a remote cabin should have been a chance to escape, to reconnect. But for the Buchanans, it would be their last. What started as a simple getaway turned into a mystery shrouded in flames and blood. When firefighters responded to a call about a forest fire in Greenwood, they stumbled upon something far worse: human remains in the charred wreckage of a cabin. Adam Buchanan's family was nowhere to be found, and what followed would expose a chilling story of betrayal, manipulation, and a son willing to do anything to escape his father's shadow. The question on everyone's mind: was it an accident, or was this a carefully orchestrated murder? On September 13, 2015, the local fire department received a distress call about a possible forest fire in Greenwood. When the first responders arrived, they quickly worked to contain the growing flames, but the fire had already ravaged much of the cabin. The debris was still warm, with some parts of it too hot to touch. Once the fire was under control, firefighters sifted through the ashes and discovered what they first thought were animal remains. But the discovery soon turned more sinister. Among the debris, charred bones were found, and the fire's heat had concealed the true horror. At first, no one suspected human involvement, but as the firefighters continued their investigation, they uncovered part of a chest bone and a piece of a skull, with what appeared to be a bullet hole in it. The presence of the skull fragment was a turning point in the investigation, and it was clear that these weren't animal remains. These were human, and they belonged to the Buchanans. Local authorities quickly got involved. Upon examining the site, they realized that the cabin in question belonged to Adam Buchanan, a local businessman with a successful construction company in Benicia. The police arrived at his home to find his son, Nolan, who claimed that he had stayed behind for the weekend, spending time with his girlfriend instead of accompanying the family to the cabin. Nolan was calm, almost eerily so, when he spoke about the missing family members and told police he expected them to return that very evening. At this point, the police realized something wasn't adding up. Why was Nolan so indifferent? His parents were missing, and their cabin was now a charred ruin, yet he showed no sign of distress. His response to the situation was strangely nonchalant, and he even suggested that the fire could have been caused by an accident, like a fight between his parents or an accident involving his younger brother, Gavin. It was an unsettlingly distant reaction to the tragedy unfolding before him. As the police dug deeper, they began questioning the logistics of the situation. They noticed a white Ford F-150 truck parked in the driveway, but the family had reportedly gone to the cabin in a different vehicle. This raised more questions. The authorities began to develop several theories about what might have occurred. Initial investigations pointed to Adam's tumultuous relationship with Molly, as well as his violent temper. Authorities wondered if Adam had taken his .22 caliber rifle and used it in a violent act against his family, possibly killing them and then setting the cabin on fire to cover his tracks. But there was a glaring issue with this theory. The bodies didn't show signs of smoke inhalation, which suggested that they were already dead by the time the fire broke out. Even more puzzling was the fact that no firearm had been found at the scene. After a detailed search of the area, investigators made a crucial discovery: the murder weapon. The .22 caliber rifle, Adam's weapon of choice, was found not far from Molly's purse, suggesting that Adam had used it to kill his family, likely before setting the fire to destroy the evidence. But this theory didn't fit all the facts, and the case quickly began to take a strange turn. As police continued their investigation, They looked into Adam's relationships with others. He was known to have a temper, often using foul language with his employees. But this angle turned out to be a dead end. While police were still piecing things together, Nolan's behavior remained increasingly odd. Nolan, who appeared unfazed by the tragedy, showed no outward signs of grief or remorse. In fact, he reportedly told his grandfather that he was happier than he'd ever been, claiming it was because he'd had such a good time with his girlfriend that weekend. But it wasn't just his emotional coldness that raised alarms. It was his actions. Nolan showed up at work at Buchanan Construction, looking as if nothing was wrong. He had bought new clothes, a flashy sports coat, and was spending money without a care. Nolan's focus seemed to be on the company's bank accounts, and he was eager to access them as soon as possible. The police were beginning to shift their focus to Nolan. They started looking more closely at his actions during the days surrounding the fire. Forensic analysis of the rifle found Nolan's fingerprints all over it, but this wasn't enough to conclusively link him to the murders. The presence of his prints didn't automatically mean he had killed his family. It could have been from a time when he handled the gun in the past. But soon, more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Surveillance footage from local businesses and cross-referencing with Adam's credit card history gave investigators a clearer picture. On the night of September 11th, Adam had made a purchase at Taco Bell, paying for 4 drinks. 4 cups were later discovered in the debris of the cabin. This suggested that Nolan had been with the family when they traveled to the cabin, as he was the likely 4th person. Surveillance footage captured Adam and Molly at a local bar later that night, with the couple leaving in the Ford truck. But in the early hours of the morning, the truck was seen driving back toward the cabin. An hour later, it was headed toward the interstate. Police pieced together the timeline and theorized that Nolan was the one driving the vehicle during these late hours. They concluded that Nolan had killed his family between 3:30 and 4:30 a.m. on September 12th. Afterward, he seemingly went on a fast food spree using his father's credit card to buy food from McDonald's and Starbucks. This was further evidence of his callousness, as if the brutal murders were nothing more than a minor inconvenience to him. Nolan tried to cover his tracks, but his attempts to throw off investigators with misleading information only made things worse. He had told several people that he had been home alone over the weekend, trying to establish an alibi. But his girlfriend later confirmed that he had cancelled their plans and lied about being home alone. On October 4th, 2015, Nolan Buchanan was arrested for the brutal murders of his family. He was charged with 3 counts of murder and taken into custody. His trial began in April 2018, and Nolan's defense attorneys attempted to argue that he had acted in self-defense, claiming that Adam had been the real killer. They painted a picture of a violent man, one whose abusive actions might have triggered an uncontrollable response from Nolan. However, the prosecution's case was airtight. They presented compelling evidence that Nolan had planned the murders, staging the scene and attempting to destroy the evidence with the fire. In the end, Nolan was found guilty of first-degree murder in the deaths of his mother, father, and brother. The tragedy of the Buchanan family is one that still haunts the Greenwood community. The quiet cabin in the woods, once a symbol of escape and family bonding, is now a chilling reminder of the horrors that can hide behind closed doors. It serves as a stark warning of the darkness that can sometimes lurk within even the most seemingly perfect families. In the aftermath, the Buchanan story remains one of betrayal, manipulation, and violence, a cautionary tale of what can happen when anger and resentment fester.